The warning klaxons had been wailing for 17 minutes. Captain Mara Lynn counted each second as she crawled through the twisted ventilation shaft, her headlamp cutting through billows of crystallizing vapor. Beneath her, the outpost's main corridor had collapsed, crushed beneath tons of ice that had once been the secure ceiling of Halcyon Research Station. Status report, she barked into her comm unit, voice steady, despite the tremble in her gloved fingers. The station groaned around her, a wounded beast settling into its death throes. Primary life support failing, came the static-filled reply from Ensign Wolski. Backup generators at 32%. Temperature in sectors 3 through 7, dropping below survival threshold. Mara gritted her teeth, pushing forward through a particularly narrow section where the metal had crumpled inward. Her shoulder scraped against a jagged edge, tearing her thermal suit. Immediately, the bitter cold of Europa bit through the breach, a vicious reminder of the hostile moon they'd dared to inhabit. "And communications?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Still nothing, Captain," Wolski's voice cracked. "The relay tower collapsed in the quake. We've been sending emergency bursts for 6 hours. No response from corporate or the orbital platforms." Mara stopped her forward crawl, resting her forehead against the frigid metal, for just one moment. 6 hours since the ice quake had torn through the station. 6 hours since they'd lost contact with the mining corporation that owned them body and soul. And now she knew for certain what she'd suspected. Since the first tremor hit, no one was coming to save them. 3 days earlier, she'd received the encrypted message from corporate headquarters. The quarterly relief fleet had been diverted to the more profitable Titan colony. Halcyon Station and its 87 inhabitants would need to wait another 3 months for supplies, replacement parts, and the routine personnel rotation that would have taken half of them back to the warmth of Earth or Mars. Mara had signed the acknowledgement form, accepting the delay on behalf of the station. She'd done it because refusing would have accomplished nothing except a black mark on her service record. She had swallowed her rage and kept the news to herself, planning to break it gently to the crew after the next supply inventory. Now that delay might kill them all. "Captain, are you there?" Wolski's voice pulled her back to the present. "I'm here." Mara resumed her crawl muscles, screaming as she dragged herself forward. "I'm almost at Junction C. Once I cross over, I'll be able to reach the main lab." That was where most of the survivors had gathered, according to the life sign scanners that still functioned. The lab had independent environmental controls and thick walls designed to contain potential experimental mishaps. It had become an accidental shelter when the outpost cracked open like an egg. The ventilation shaft widened slightly, allowing Mara to move faster. Ice crystals formed on her eyelashes, and each exhale clouded before her. The station had been cold before a research outpost on an ice moon couldn't be anything else, but this was different. This was the killing cold of space seeping in where it didn't belong. When she finally reached the junction, she paused to check her handheld scanner. The lab was just below her, one level, down through an access hatch that, if luck was with them, might have remained intact. "I'm at the junction," she reported. "Preparing to descend to the lab. How many life signs are you reading down there?" 23 confirmed, Wolski answered. "Wait 24 now. Movement detected from Sector 6. Someone else is making their way to you." Mara felt a surge of relief. 24 out of 87 was a brutal survival rate, but it was better than she'd feared after seeing the devastation firsthand. And if one more person had found a way through the wreckage, perhaps others would too. She twisted the manual release on the hatch beneath her muscles, straining against the frozen mechanism. With a groan of protest, it finally gave way, swinging downward. Warm air, relatively warm, at least rushed up to meet her, carrying the scent of people and fear and the tang of medical antiseptic. "I've got access," she said. "Going radio silent until I assess the situation. If you lose my signal—" "Don't say it, Captain." Wolski's voice was firm, despite the undertone of terror. "Just get those people safe. I'll keep monitoring from the comm center as long as the power holds." Mara nodded, though her ensign couldn't see her. "Hold your position. I'll send help as soon as I can." She switched off the comm unit to conserve its battery, and began her descent. The lab sprawled beneath her once immaculate workstations, now pushed against walls to create space in the center. Emergency lights bathed everything in a pale blue glow that made the faces of the survivors look ghostly. Some sat huddled in thermal blankets. Others moved with purpose, tending to the injured, or working at the few functioning computer terminals. As Mara dropped the last few feet to the floor, heads turned toward her. She recognized most of them researchers, technicians, a few miners who must have been topside when the quake hit the deep excavation tunnels. Her stomach twisted at the thought of how many might still be trapped below, if any had survived at all. "Captain Lin." The voice came from her right, where a tall figure stepped forward from the shadows. Dr. Varick, the station's xenobotanist, his angular features even more pronounced by the harsh emergency lighting. A deep gash ran across his forehead, hastily treated, but his eyes were clear and focused. "We were beginning to think the command center had been completely destroyed." "It has been," Mara said, stripping off her torn outer gloves. "I was in the engineering bay when the quake hit. Made my way here through the ventilation system." She scanned the room, taking inventory of supplies, working equipment, and most importantly, the condition of her people. "Who's in charge here?" "I am," came another voice, and Mara turned to see Alana Resnick, the head scientist, emerge from a makeshift medical area. Her normally pristine lab coat was stained with blood and other fluids Mara didn't want to identify. "We've organized what we could. Tessa has been handling the worst injuries." As if summoned by her name, Nurse Tessa Chen appeared beside Alana, her dark hair pulled back in a practical knot face, drawn with exhaustion. "Captain, thank God. We've got 7 critical cases who need evacuation to a proper medical facility." Her voice dropped. "They won't last more than 48 hours without it." The weight of command settled more heavily on Mara's shoulders. These people were looking to her for rescue, for a way out of this frozen tomb. And she had nothing to give them but the terrible truth. "There's no evacuation coming," she said quietly, but in the hush of the lab, her words carried to every corner. "Corporate diverted the relief ships to Titan 3 days ago. They're not due back in Europa's orbit for another 3 months." The silence that followed was worse than any outcry would have been. Mara watched hope drain from face after face as the reality of their situation sank in. "Then, we're dead." It was Alana who finally spoke, her scientific mind already calculating their odds. "The main generators are failing. Life support can't handle the load with all these breaches. Even if we seal ourselves in here, the oxygen will run out in 73 hours. Dr. Varick supplied his voice clinically precise. "I've been monitoring the decline." He gestured to a makeshift oxygen garden in the corner of the lab, a miniature jungle of alien plants he'd been studying now, repurposed as an emergency CO2 scrubber. "My specimens are helping, but they were never meant to support this many people." Mara straightened her back, refusing to let her own despair show. "We're not dead until we're dead, Doctor. And I don't plan on freezing to death on this god-forsaken moon." She turned, addressing the entire room now. "We have 73 hours to find a solution. That's our mission now. Survival." Someone in the back of the room laughed bitterly. "Survive? How you just said no one's coming." "I said corporate isn't coming," Mara corrected a plan already forming in her mind. "But there are other ships in Europa's orbit. Research vessels, independent prospectors, maybe even a naval patrol if we're very lucky." She turned to the nearest functional terminal. "We need to boost our distress signal, make it impossible to ignore." Dr. Varick moved to her side, lowering his voice. "The main communications array is destroyed, Captain. We all saw it collapse. Then we build a new one," Mara replied, pulling up the station schematics on the terminal. "Look, there's a secondary array on the far side of the research wing. It's smaller, meant for short-range communications between outposts, but if we can modify it—" "The research wing is completely cut off," Alana interrupted, pointing to a section of the schematic flashing red. "The connecting corridor collapsed. No one can get through there. Mara zoomed in on the map, studying it with the intensity of someone searching for a key to a locked door. Not through the corridor, no. But what about here? She pointed to a maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the collapsed section. This was designed to access the thermal regulation systems. It should still be intact. It'll be flooded with ammonia coolant, Tessa objected. The cooling systems ruptured in sectors 4 and 5. Then we drain it, Mara said simply. She turned to the gathered survivors, raising her voice again. I need volunteers. Engineers, technicians, anyone who knows their way around station systems. We're going to reach that communication array and call for help. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, a miner stepped forward, a burly woman with a bandage wrapped around her forearm. I worked cooling systems on Ganymede before transferring here. I know how to drain the tunnels. Another joined her, a lanky maintenance tech with a shock of red hair. I can help rewire the array, if it's still functional. One by one, they stepped forward, offering skills, knowledge, a willingness to try against impossible odds. Mara felt a swell of pride cut through her guilt and fear. These were her people, resilient, resourceful, refusing to surrender to the ice. Captain! Tessa approached her, as the volunteers organized themselves into teams. What can I do? I need to stay with the injured, but you're doing exactly what you should be, Mara assured her. Keep them alive, nurse. That's your mission. She glanced at the makeshift medical area, where the critical cases lay. How bad is it, really? Tessa's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing the exhaustion beneath. Bad. Jenkins lost too much blood before we could get to him. Yamato has a punctured lung. Rivera's hanging on, but her internal injuries. She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. I'm doing what I can with what we have. I know you are, Mara squeezed her shoulder. And it matters. Every life matters. As Tessa returned to her patients, Dr. Varick approached, carrying what looked like a heavily modified environmental suit. If you're going through those tunnels, you'll need better protection than that torn outfit. He nodded to her damaged thermal suit. I've reinforced this one with insulation from my specimen containers. It won't be pretty, but it should keep the cold and the ammonia at bay. Mara accepted the suit, studying the scientist with new appreciation. Thank you, Doctor. I didn't realize you had engineering skills. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Xenobotany on ice moons requires considerable improvisation, Captain. Plants don't grow where they're told to, and equipment fails at the most inconvenient moments. His expression sobered. You should know the chances of that array still being operational are slim. And even if it is, the chances of anyone hearing us are slimmer. I know the odds, Mara said quietly. But I also know I signed off on that supply delay. Every person who dies here does so partly because I didn't fight hard enough against corporate's decision. She met his gaze directly. I won't let that happen without trying everything possible to save them. Dr. Varick studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then I'm coming with you. My plants will keep producing oxygen without me for a while, and you'll need someone who understands the biological hazards we might encounter. Some of my specimens were reactive when the containment fields failed. Mara wanted to refuse to order him to stay with his oxygen garden, but she recognized the determination in his eyes. It mirrored her own. Gear up then. We move in 15 minutes. As she changed into the reinforced suit, Mara glanced around the lab at the people working with desperate efficiency. Some were crying silently as they worked. Others wore masks of grim determination. All of them knew their lives hung by the thinnest of threads. Mara fastened the final seal on her suit and activated the internal heater. For the first time in hours, warmth began to seep back into her extremities. She flexed her fingers, preparing for what lay ahead. Captain! It was Alana approaching with a handheld scanner. Before you go, you should know something. She lowered her voice, ensuring only Mara could hear. I've been monitoring seismic activity. This wasn't a natural icequake. Mara froze. What are you saying? The pattern is all wrong. The epicenter was directly beneath the main excavation tunnel. The one corporate ordered us to dig despite my team's warnings about structural instability. Alana's eyes were hard. They knew, Captain. They knew the risk and they pushed us to dig anyway. And when the sensors started showing warning signs 3 days ago, that's when they suddenly diverted the relief ships. The implication hit Mara like a physical blow. They abandoned us, deliberately. I can't prove it, Alana said. But the timing is suggestive. Mara absorbed this feeling cold rage crystallize in her chest. If what Alana suggested was true, then corporate had sacrificed an entire research station, rather than admit their mining operation had been too aggressive, too reckless. They had written off 87 lives as an acceptable loss. This doesn't change our immediate objective, Mara said finally. But when not, if we get off this moon, I want all your data secured. Every reading, every warning you sent, every response from corporate. She met Alana's gaze. Someone will answer for this. Alana nodded some of her earlier defeat, transforming into determination. I've already started compiling it, and Captain... She hesitated. Good luck. We'll be ready to help when you reach the array. Mara rejoined her team of volunteers near the lab's rear access point. 8 people, herself included, would attempt the journey through the maintenance tunnels to the secondary communications array. They carried tools, emergency medical supplies, and a fierce determination to survive. Our goal is simple, Mara told them, as they prepared to descend into the tunnels. Reach the array, modify it to broadcast on emergency frequencies, and send a distress call powerful enough to reach anyone in Jupiter's orbit. We have enough portable oxygen for 6 hours. The journey there and back should take 4, if everything goes according to plan. Nothing ever goes according to plan on Europa, muttered one of the technicians, but he checked his equipment with methodical care as he spoke. True enough, Mara acknowledged, which is why we'll be prepared for when it doesn't. She surveyed her team, a mix of engineers, technicians, and Dr. Varick, all watching her with the desperate hope of the condemned. Let's move out. She led them through the access hatch and into the darkness below, where their headlamps created small islands of light in an ocean of shadow. The maintenance tunnel stretched before them, a claustrophobic tube, barely tall enough to stand in its walls, slick with condensation that had frozen into treacherous sheets of ice. Watch your footing, Mara warned as they began their careful progress. And stay alert for coolant leaks. Your suits will protect you from brief exposure, but prolonged contact will eat through the material. They moved in single file, following the tunnel's gentle downward slope. The station groaned and shifted around the ice, continuing to settle in the aftermath of the quake. Each creak and groan made them pause, listening for the telltale sounds of an imminent collapse. An hour into their journey, they reached the first obstacle, a section of tunnel half filled with glowing blue liquid ammonia, coolant, pooled where it had leaked from ruptured pipes above. This is worse than I expected, said the miner, who'd volunteered her expertise. She approached the edge of the pool cautiously. We can't go through this. Even with the reinforced suits, the concentration is too high. Can we drain it? Mara asked, studying the tunnel's configuration. Maybe. The miner Diaz Mara recalled her name, now pointed to a maintenance panel, half submerged in the coolant. There should be an emergency purge system behind that panel. If it's still operational, we can redirect the flow to the secondary containment tanks. I'll get it, Dr. Varick said unexpectedly, already moving toward the panel. Doctor, wait, Mara began, but he was already kneeling beside the pool, his movements careful but decisive. My suit has extra reinforcement around the forearms, he explained, reaching into the glowing liquid. I modified it for handling volatile specimens. His face contorted with concentration as his fingers worked blindly, searching for the manual release beneath the surface. Almost. There. The liquid suddenly began to drain, sliding away through previously hidden outlets in the tunnel floor. Varick withdrew his arm quickly, checking the suit's integrity. The material had begun to bubble and smoke where the ammonia had touched it, but it hadn't breached completely. "Impressive work, Doctor," Mara said, genuinely surprised. He shrugged, though she could see the pride in his eyes. "Like I said, xenobotany requires adaptability. Shall we continue?" They pressed on, encountering and overcoming similar obstacles as they went. A collapsed section forced them to crawl through a space barely wider than their shoulders. A damaged electrical conduit sent arcs of blue-white energy across their path until one of the engineers managed to shut down the power flow. 2 hours in, they reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. "The array should be accessible through the northeast passage," Mara said, consulting her handheld map. "That would be this one." She pointed to the rightmost tunnel. "Captain," one of the technicians called out, his voice hushed with warning. "Movement sensors are picking up something ahead." Mara frowned, checking her own scanner. Indeed, there was movement, irregular stuttering motion approximately 50 meters down the tunnel she'd indicated. "Survivors," someone suggested hopefully. "Possibly," Mara agreed, though something about the pattern seemed wrong for human movement. "Or it could be debris shifting or a mechanical system cycling on and off. Or one of Dr. Varick's reactive specimens," another technician muttered darkly. Dr. Varick himself stepped forward, studying the readout. "I had nothing that could survive in these conditions," he said. "But caution would be advisable nonetheless." Mara nodded. "I'll investigate. The rest of you hold position here." "Captain," Dr. Varick began to object. "That's an order, Doctor," she said firmly. "If there's danger ahead, we don't all need to face it. And if it's a survivor needing help, one person can move faster than a group." She checked her suit's oxygen levels, still above 60%, and unclipped a utility knife from her belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. She moved forward alone, the beam of her headlamp cutting through the darkness of the tunnel. The movement readings grew stronger as she approached, still erratic, but definitely present. 20 meters ahead now, then 10. Mara slowed her pace, straining to hear over the sound of her own breathing inside the suit. There, a scraping noise, metal on metal, followed by a hiss of escaping gas or fluid. She rounded a slight bend in the tunnel and stopped short. Before her, a maintenance drone lay on its side, one manipulator arm still functioning, scraping uselessly against the tunnel wall as it tried to right itself. Its central housing was crushed, leaking hydraulic fluid that froze almost instantly as it hit the cold air. Mara approached cautiously. Station drones weren't programmed for combat, but damaged systems could behave unpredictably. This one showed no sign of recognizing her presence, its sensors likely as damaged as its chassis. "Just a drone," she reported over her comm. "Damaged beyond repair. I'm proceeding ahead to make sure the path is clear." The tunnel widened slightly as she continued, eventually opening into a small maintenance hub, a junction room where system access points clustered along the walls. And there, in the center of the room, lay another drone. But this one wasn't alone. A figure in a station maintenance uniform lay half-pinned beneath it, unmoving. Mara rushed forward, her heart pounding. Another survivor? But how long had they been trapped here? She reached the fallen worker and carefully moved the drone aside her augmented suit, providing the necessary strength. The person beneath was a woman, her face obscured by a frosted breath mask. As Mara cleared away the debris, the woman's eyes flickered open, unfocused at first, then widening with surprise. "Key Captain!" Her voice was barely audible even through Mara's comm pickup. "Hold on," Mara said, checking the woman's vitals on her scanner. "You're injured, but you're alive. Can you tell me your name?" "Santos," the woman managed. "Teresa Santos. I was conducting maintenance when the quake hit. Got trapped." "You're going to be all right, Santos," Mara assured her, though the scanner showed dangerously low body temperature and a broken femur. "I'm going to call my team. We'll get you out of here." She summoned the others, and within minutes, Dr. Varick was tending to Santos, while the engineers assessed the stability of the junction room. "She needs proper medical attention," Dr. Varick said quietly to Mara. The femur is a clean break, but she's been here for hours. Hypothermia has set in. Can she be moved? He hesitated. With proper support for the leg, yes, but she'll slow us down considerably. Mara nodded, understanding the unspoken question. Time was their enemy, as much as the cold and the failing station. Every minute spent meant less oxygen, less power, less chance for those waiting in the lab. We take her with us, Mara decided firmly. Rig a stretcher from available materials. 2 people will be responsible for carrying her at all times, rotating the duty among us. If anyone disagreed with her decision, they kept it to themselves. Within 15 minutes, they had fashioned a crude stretcher from drone parts and insulation material. Santos lay strapped to it, Dr. Varick having administered the strongest painkillers from their limited medical supplies. The communications array should be just beyond that access corridor. One of the engineers reported pointing to a heavy door at the far side of the junction room. If the schematics are correct. And if it's still intact, another added grimly. Mara approached the door, examining the electronic lock that secured it. Power's out to this section. We'll need to use the manual override. She located the small panel beside the door and pulled it open, revealing a hand crank. Someone give me a hand with this. She and Diaz took turns, cranking the mechanism muscles, straining against the resistance of frozen gears. Gradually, agonizingly, the door began to slide open, revealing darkness beyond. Lights, Mara ordered, and their combined headlamps illuminated a scene of both destruction and hope. The communications room had suffered significant damage. Ceiling panels had collapsed onto delicate equipment. Ice encrusted every surface, and a large crack ran along one wall where the structure had nearly given way entirely. But there, in the center of the room, the secondary array stood dented, but seemingly intact. Status check, Mara commanded, as they carefully entered, engineers immediately moving to assess the equipment. Main power's down, obviously, reported one technician examining the central console. But there's a dedicated backup supply for emergency systems. If we can access it. The waveguide assembly is damaged, called another from beside the array itself. We'll need to bypass it completely if we want to transmit anything. The focusing dish is intact, a third added more optimistically, and the transmission amplifiers look salvageable. Mara moved between them, helping where she could, directing their efforts, while Dr. Varick monitored Santos, and the rest of the team secured the room against further collapse. How long? She asked after an hour of feverish work. Another 30 minutes minimum, the lead engineer replied, not looking up from the circuit board he was meticulously rewiring. We're having to create pathways that weren't in the original design. It's delicate work. Mara checked her oxygen levels, just under 40% now. Enough to complete the mission and return to the lab, but with less margin for error than she would have liked. Work faster, she said simply. 28 minutes later, the communications array hummed to life power, flowing through jury-rigged circuits. The technicians stepped back, expressions hovering between pride and uncertainty. It's as ready as it's going to be, Captain, the lead engineer announced. But I should warn you, we've had to sacrifice range for power. This signal won't reach Earth or even Mars. It's got enough juice to maybe reach ships in Jupiter's orbit, but that's it. That's all we need, Mara said, moving to the transmitter. If we can reach anyone, a research vessel, a mining ship, even a lone prospector, we have a chance. She activated the emergency broadcast channel. This is Captain Mara Lin of Halcyon Research Station on Europa. We have experienced a catastrophic structural failure following a seismic event. Life support is failing. We have multiple casualties. Any vessels receiving this transmission, please respond. She repeated the message 3 times, then set it to automatic repeat every 30 seconds. The signal strength indicator fluctuated wildly, the makeshift repairs barely holding. Now we wait, Dr. Varick said, coming to stand beside her. Mara nodded, her eyes fixed on the communications panel. Now we wait. The minutes stretched into an hour. Santos drifted in and out of consciousness on her improvised stretcher. The engineers took turns monitoring the array, making tiny adjustments to keep the signal from degrading further. Dr. Varick administered another dose of painkillers to Santos when her discomfort became too great to bear silently. "Captain," he said quietly, drawing Mara aside, "we should consider returning to the lab soon. Our oxygen supplies are limited, and the others will be wondering what's happened to us." Mara knew he was right. The logical course of action would be to set the array to continue broadcasting automatically and make their way back to the rest of the survivors. And yet, 5 more minutes, she said. Just 5 more. Dr. Varick didn't argue, merely nodding his understanding. He returned to Santos's side, checking her vitals once more. 4 minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the repetitive beep of the transmitter, sending out its plea for help. Mara watched the signal strength indicator waver dip and recover each fluctuation, feeling like a heartbeat that might be the station's last. And then, so faint she thought she might have imagined it, a crackle of response from the comm speaker. "Did you hear that?" she demanded, lunging for the controls. The others looked up, startled by her sudden movement. "Boost the receiver gain," she ordered one of the technicians. "Maximum power to the input amplifiers." The technician obeyed, and the static grew louder. Within it, barely distinguishable, was a human voice. "Reading you, Halcyon Station. This is Lieutenant Vega aboard UN scout vessel Perseverance. We are approximately 4 hours from your position at maximum burn. Please confirm status and number of survivors." The control room erupted in a chaos of relief. Tears, laughter, embraces between people who had been strangers hours before. Mara felt lightheaded, her own eyes burning with unshed tears as she keyed the transmitter. "Perseverance. This is Captain Lin. Confirmed approximately 24 survivors gathered in the main laboratory. An unknown number may still be trapped in other sections of the station. We have multiple critical injuries requiring immediate medical evacuation. Life support failing, estimated 73 hours remaining at current capacity." "Understood, Halcyon." Lieutenant Vega's voice came through clearer now as they adjusted the receiver. "We are a small vessel with limited medical facilities, but we're alerting all ships in the sector to your situation. The UN Dauntless is being diverted to your location, estimated arrival time 7 hours after our own." Mara felt a surge of hope so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. "Thank you, Perseverance. We'll be monitoring this frequency. Halcyon out." She turned to her team, unable to keep the smile from her face despite the gravity of their situation. "We've got ships inbound. The Perseverance in 4 hours, and a larger vessel 3 hours after that." She looked at each of them in turn. "We're going to live through this, all of us. Now let's get back to the lab and give everyone the good news." The journey back seemed faster, buoyed as they were by newfound hope. Even carrying Santos's stretcher didn't slow them significantly, each person finding reserves of strength they hadn't known they possessed. When they finally emerged into the lab, they were greeted with anxious faces that transformed to joy as Mara announced their success. Ilana wept openly. Nurse Tessa looked up from her patients with the first real smile Mara had seen since the disaster began. 4 hours, Mara told them all. 4 hours until the first ship arrives, and we need to be ready. Tessa, prepare the critical patients for immediate evacuation. Everyone else gather only essential personal items and medical records. Whatever can fit in a single carry bag. The lab became a hive of focused activity. Mara moved among them, offering encouragement, helping where needed, making sure no one was forgotten in the rush. 3.5 hours later, her comm unit crackled to life, not the makeshift relay from the array this time, but a direct transmission from nearby. "Halcyon Station, this is Lieutenant Vega of the Perseverance. We are in visual range of your position and preparing for atmospheric entry. Please confirm the best approach vector to your location." Mara felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Lieutenant, we are transmitting coordinates now. Be advised the main docking bay has been compromised. You'll need to use the emergency airlock on the research wing." Understood, Halcyon. We're detecting the signal from your secondary array, adjusting course accordingly. ETA 20 minutes to touchdown. 20 minutes. After hours of desperate struggle of clinging to hope by their fingernails, rescue was just 20 minutes away. Everyone ready? Mara asked the gathered survivors. They nodded faces, showing a complex mixture of relief, disbelief, and the lingering shadows of trauma that would take far longer than 20 minutes to heal. Dr. Varick approached her, his specimen containers carefully packed into a single case. Captain, I should tell you I've received communications from the array. 3 more ships are on their way besides the Dauntless. Word of our situation has spread through the Jupiter orbital network. Mara nodded grateful, but not surprised. Whatever corporate might think, other humans wouldn't leave them to die if there was any way to help. That was the one certainty she had clung to throughout this ordeal. As the minutes ticked down, they felt the vibration of the approaching ship through the station structure. Mara led them through the lab's rear exit cleared by her engineers, while she had been coordinating the evacuation and toward the emergency airlock that would be their gateway to salvation. They had just reached the airlock antechamber when a new message came through, this one, not from Lieutenant Vega. Halcyon Station, this is Captain Rails of the corporate vessel Implacable. Be advised we have priority extraction rights for this facility. All key personnel are to assemble for immediate transfer to our vessel upon landing. Corporate Protocol 773A is now in effect. Mara froze ice, forming in her veins, that had nothing to do with Europa's cold. Protocol 773A. The emergency evacuation protocol that prioritized mission-critical personnel in a crisis situation. She knew it well, had even helped draft some of its provisions when she first joined the corporation. What the corporate training vids never mentioned was that mission-critical didn't include maintenance workers, or miners or support staff. It didn't include people like Diaz or Santos or most of the 24 survivors now looking to her with renewed fear in their eyes. And with sickening clarity, Mara remembered her digital signature on the protocol implementation form 3 years earlier, a routine administrative task she'd completed without fully understanding the implications. Her authorization that would now determine who lived and who died. Captain, Ilana asked quietly, what is Protocol 773A? Before Mara could answer, the airlock sensors detected an approaching vessel, not the Perseverance with its promised rescue, but the larger, sleek form of a corporate transport. It's a selective evacuation protocol. Mara said, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside her. Corporate policy for catastrophic events, where full evacuation isn't economically viable. Understanding dawned on Ilana's face. They're not coming for all of us. No, Mara confirmed. They're not, she turned to the entire group. But that doesn't matter because we're not going with them. The Perseverance will be here in minutes, and they've promised to take everyone. The airlock's external sensors showed the corporate vessel settling onto the icy surface near the emergency exit. Its docking tube extended, seeking connection with the station systems. Captain Lin, came Rails's voice again. I have your personnel manifest. Please assemble the following individuals for immediate extraction. Dr. Ilana Resnick, Dr. James Varick, Engineer Wolski, Technician Imari Specialist. Mara cut the transmission with a savage jab at the control panel. No one is going anywhere with them, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. We stick together. We wait for Lieutenant Vega. But even as she spoke, she saw doubt creeping into some faces. Survival was a powerful instinct, and the corporate ship offered certain escape for those deemed valuable enough. Captain, one of the technicians said hesitantly, if they're offering immediate evacuation for some of us. And what about the rest? Mara demanded. The miners, the maintenance crew, the non-essential personnel. We leave them behind to die when their air runs out. The technician fell silent, shame evident in his averted eyes. The airlock sensors pinged again, another ship approaching, the Perseverance right on schedule. This is Lieutenant Vega, came the welcome voice over the comm. We are commencing docking procedures. Stand by. Almost simultaneously, the inner airlock door began to cycle open, the corporate vessel having established connection on the other side. Captain Rails stepped through, flanked by two security officers in corporate armor. His immaculate uniform and well-fed appearance stood in stark contrast to the haggard, injured survivors. "Captain Lin," he said with professional courtesy that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here to facilitate the extraction of key personnel as per Protocol 773A. He gestured to a datapad in his hand. "I have the authorized list right here, signed by you, I believe." Mara stepped forward, placing herself between Rails and her people. "The situation has changed, Captain. We have multiple vessels en route for a full evacuation. Your selective protocol is unnecessary." Rails's expression hardened. "The protocol isn't optional, Captain. These are corporate assets we're recovering." He glanced past her, at the survivors. "Dr. Resnick, Dr. Varick, please step forward. Your expertise is too valuable to risk in an uncertain evacuation scenario." Neither scientist moved. Rails's professional veneer cracked slightly. "This isn't a request. It's a direct order under your employment contracts." "Our contracts don't obligate us to abandon our colleagues," Dr. Varick said quietly. "Your contracts obligate you to follow corporate directives during emergencies," Rails snapped. "And this qualifies." He turned to his security officers. "Assist the priority personnel in gathering their essential research materials." The officers stepped forward, hands moving to the weapons at their sides. Mara's people instinctively backed away, forming a tighter group. "That's far enough," Mara said, her voice cut with steel. "No one is going anywhere against their will." "This isn't about will, Captain Lin. It's about survival of the mission of the corporation's investment." Rails's voice softened to something almost reasonable. "The hard truth is, we can't save everyone. The smart play is to save those whose knowledge and skills justify the extraction cost." "The cost," Mara's laugh was bitter. "That's what this comes down to, isn't it? The cost of human lives measured against quarterly profits. Don't be naive, Lin. You've been in this business long enough to know how it works." Rails checked his watch. "We have a limited window before the storm front moves in. I need the listed personnel to come with me now. And if they refuse?" Rails's smile was thin. "Then, I'm authorized to employ necessary force to secure corporate assets, including human assets." The tension in the room ratcheted higher. The security officers' hands now rested openly on their weapons. Mara's people drew closer together, some looking to her with fear, others with determination to follow her lead whatever she decided. The moment was shattered by a new voice from the airlock behind them. "This is Lieutenant Vega of the United Earth Navy vessel Perseverance." A slight figure in a naval uniform stepped through the inner door, flanked by two officers in medical gear. "We're responding to a distress call from this station." Relief flooded through Mara. "Lieutenant, perfect timing." Vega took in the scene with a quick professional glance. The corporate officers with their hands on weapons, the huddled survivors, the clear standoff in progress. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Rails said smoothly. "Corporate Protocol 773A is in effect. We're facilitating the evacuation of essential personnel." "I see." Vega's expression remained neutral. "And the rest of the survivors?" "Will be handled according to corporate policy." Vega turned to Mara. "Captain Lin, I presume your distress call indicated 24 survivors requiring evacuation." "That's correct, Lieutenant. All 24. Vega nodded, then addressed Rails directly. "Captain, I'm sure you're aware that under Outer Planet's treaty regulations, any distress call supersedes corporate protocols. All survivors fall under naval protection until safely delivered to a proper medical facility." "This is a corporate installation," Rails objected. "Treaty regulations don't apply here. We have contractual authority." "To operate the installation, yes," Vega interrupted. "Not to selectively evacuate survivors in a life-threatening emergency." The lieutenant's hand rested casually on a sidearm. "My orders are to evacuate all survivors from this station, and that's exactly what I intend to do." The corporate security officers glanced at Rails, awaiting direction. For a tense moment, Mara thought he might actually order them to engage, to risk armed confrontation with naval personnel, in order to enforce corporate will. Instead, Rails's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. "This is a mistake, Lieutenant. Some of these people are carrying critical research data that belongs to the corporation. At minimum, we need to secure that intellectual property before—" "Medical evacuation takes priority over property concerns," Vega said firmly. "You can file a claim for any corporate assets once these people are safe." The lieutenant turned to the naval medical officers. "Begin triage. Critical cases first, then anyone with injuries." As the medical team moved forward, Rails made one final attempt. "Dr. Resnick, Dr. Varick, remember your contractual obligations. The corporation has invested billions in your research." Ilana stepped forward, but not toward Rails. Instead, she moved to Mara's side, her expression resolute. "My obligation is to the truth, Captain Rails, including the truth about how corporate mining directives caused this disaster despite my team's warnings." She held up a data chip. "All documented, all time-stamped. I imagine the board of directors will be very interested to review it during the inevitable inquiry." Dr. Varick joined them, his usual reserved manner replaced with quiet determination. "As will the scientific community, especially the parts about ignoring safety protocols to meet extraction quotas." Rails's face flushed with anger, but he was outmaneuvered and knew it. "This isn't over, Lynn," he said, voice low. "When we get back to Earth, we'll all have quite a story to tell," Mara finished for him. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have an evacuation to complete." Under Lieutenant Vega's supervision, the naval medical team began moving survivors to the Perseverance, starting with the most seriously injured. Tessa oversaw the transfer of her patients, providing critical information to the naval medics as they worked. Rails and his security team withdrew to their vessel, clearly furious, but unwilling to challenge naval authority directly. Mara knew the corporate fallout would come later: investigations, perhaps terminations, certainly legal maneuvers to discredit witness accounts, but that was a battle for another day. For now, her duty was clear: ensure every single survivor made it safely onto the rescue vessels. Captain Lynn, Lieutenant Vega approached her as the evacuation progressed. "The Dauntless will be arriving shortly with full medical facilities. In the meantime, we've prepared quarters aboard the Perseverance for your people." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Mara said sincerely. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't arrived when you did." "Just doing our job, Captain." Vega's expression softened slightly. "Though I admit we pushed the engines beyond recommended limits to get here. Your distress call was compelling." Mara raised an eyebrow. "Compelling." "We have 87 souls aboard this station, Lieutenant," Vega quoted, "and I intend to keep my promise that not one of them will be left behind." Hard to ignore that kind of determination. Mara blinked in surprise. She didn't remember saying those exact words in her transmission, but they captured the essence of what she'd felt, what she still felt about her responsibility to her people. "The outer planets can be unforgiving," Vega continued. "But out here we have to look out for each other, no matter what corporate protocols might say." "No one left behind," Mara agreed, watching as the last of her injured crew members were carefully transferred to stretchers. "No one left behind," Vega echoed with a nod of respect. As they prepared to board the Perseverance, Mara took one last look at the station that had been their home and nearly became their tomb. Europa's eternal ice had claimed many structures over the years, and soon Halcyon Station would be just another ruin buried beneath the surface. But its people, her people, would live on, carrying with them the knowledge that when it mattered most, they had stood together against both the killing cold and the cold calculations of corporate profit. Dr. Varick appeared at her side, his specimen case clutched protectively. "It's time to go, Captain." "Yes," she agreed, turning away from the station view. "Time to go home." They boarded the Perseverance together, the airlock closing behind them with a satisfying hiss of proper pressurization. Inside, the naval vessel was warm, well lit, and humming with purposeful activity, a stark contrast to the dying station they had left behind. Lieutenant Vega met them just beyond the airlock. "All your people are aboard, Captain. The Dauntless has just entered orbit and will rendezvous with us in approximately 40 minutes. Their medical bay is standing by for your most critical cases." "Thank you, Lieutenant." Mara felt the weight of the past hours pressing down on her now that the immediate danger had passed. "I'd like to see my people, if that's possible." "Of course, this way." Vega led her through the compact but efficiently designed scout ship to what appeared to be a multi-purpose room, now converted to temporary quarters. Inside, the survivors of Halcyon Station sat or lay on emergency cots receiving medical attention, food, and warm drinks from the naval crew. Seeing her enter, many looked up, some smiling, others simply nodding with exhausted acknowledgement. These were people who had faced death together, who had seen the worst and best of each other in the crucible of disaster. Such experiences forged bonds that would never truly break. Mara made her way through the room, speaking briefly with each survivor, ensuring they had what they needed, offering words of encouragement, or simply a reassuring touch on the shoulder. When she reached Tessa, the nurse was sitting beside Santos's stretcher, monitoring her vitals. "How is she?" "Stable," Tessa replied, the exhaustion evident in her voice. "The naval medics have better painkillers than anything we had access to. She's resting comfortably now." "And you?" Mara asked. "You've been caring for everyone else without a break since this started." Tessa's smile was tired but genuine. "I'll sleep for a week when we reach a proper station. Right now, I'm just glad to be alive. Glad we all are." Across the room, Mara spotted Alana, deep in conversation with a naval officer, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. Even now, the scientist was ensuring that her data, the evidence of corporate negligence, was being properly documented and secured. "Captain." It was Dr. Varick approaching with 2 steaming cups. He handed one to her. "The lieutenant thought you might appreciate this." Mara accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the aroma of real coffee, a luxury they hadn't had at the outpost for months. "Thank you, Doctor." They stood together in companionable silence for a moment, watching the activity around them. "What happens now?" Varick asked eventually. "With corporate, I mean." Mara sipped her coffee, considering. "There will be an investigation, testimonies, probably legal action from multiple directions," she shrugged. "But that's for later. Right now, all that matters is that we're alive to fight those battles." "Thanks to you," he said quietly. "Your determination made this possible." "No," Mara corrected him. "Thanks to all of us. We survived because we refused to abandon each other, because we worked together." She met his gaze directly. "Because humans don't leave people behind." Dr. Varick nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. "An admirable quality of your species." "Our species," Mara said, including him in the statement. "Whatever our differences in background or specialty or corporate rank." The ship's intercom activated with a soft chime. "All hands, this is Lieutenant Vega. The UEN Dauntless has arrived and is extending docking tubes. Medical personnel prepare for patient transfer. All others, please secure any loose items for maneuver." Through the viewport, Mara could see the much larger naval vessel approaching a proper rescue ship with full medical facilities, crew quarters, and the means to transport everyone safely back to civilization. Beyond it, the swirling storms of Europa were beginning to clear, revealing a vista of stars and the massive curve of Jupiter rising over the horizon. "It's quite a view," Dr. Varick observed. "Yes," Mara agreed, "and one I intend to appreciate from a much greater distance in the future." As the Perseverance gently maneuvered toward the Dauntless, Mara felt the first real sense of security she'd had in days. The corporation might have been willing to write them off as acceptable losses, but humanity at large had answered their call. Individual humans. Lieutenant Vega, the naval medics, the crews of the ships now converging on their position, had responded to the distress of other humans without calculation of profit or loss. In the harsh environment of the outer planets, that simple truth might be the most valuable resource of all. Not the minerals they mined, or the data they collected, but the unspoken covenant that said no one gets left behind. Not ever. Not while others can help. Mara watched her people tired, injured but alive and together, and made a silent promise to herself. Whatever came next, whatever corporate battles or personal challenges awaited, she would remember this moment and the lesson it taught. The Perseverance docked with a gentle shudder, and new voices filled the room as dauntless medical personnel arrived to assist with the transfer. The nightmare was truly over. They were safe. Captain Lin, Lieutenant Vega approached. "The Dauntless Captain would like to speak with you once the medical transfers are complete." Mara nodded. "Of course." And Vega hesitated. "I've been instructed to inform you that your distress call has been forwarded to Earth authorities, along with preliminary reports of the corporate response. There are already questions being raised in the Planetary Council." "Good," Mara said. "There should be questions, and there should be answers." As she watched the first of her injured crew being carefully transferred to the dauntless Mara, felt a resolve solidifying within her. This wouldn't end with their rescue. The truth of what had happened at Halcyon Station, the corporate decisions that led to disaster, the attempt to abandon non-essential personnel would be told. She would make sure of it. But that was a battle for tomorrow. Today was for gratitude, for relief, for the simple joy of survival against impossible odds. Today was for honoring the human spirit that had refused to surrender to either the killing cold of Europa or the cold calculations of corporate efficiency. No one left behind, not now, not ever. As the last of her people were transferred to the dauntless Mara, finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of exhaustion. She had pushed herself beyond limits she hadn't known she possessed, driven by responsibility and determination. Now, with that duty fulfilled, she could rest. The future would bring its own challenges. There would be corporate hearings, testimonies, perhaps legal battles. There would be grief for those lost in the initial collapse, rehabilitation for the injured, nightmares for all who had survived. But they would face these things together, bound by the shared experience of having stared into the abyss and pulled each other back from its edge. Mara Lin took one last look at Europa through the viewport as she prepared to board the Dauntless. The ice moon glittered coldly beneath them, beautiful and deadly. It had nearly claimed them all, but in the darkness of its frozen tunnels, they had discovered something stronger than ice, more valuable than any mineral they had come to extract: the unbreakable human commitment to one another. Captain, Lieutenant Vega stood waiting at the docking tube. "It's time." "Yes," Mara agreed, turning away from the view with finality. "It's time to go home."